Hungary has accused Ukraine of causing an energy crisis. The Russian army continues to launch offensive actions on several fronts in Ukraine. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has unexpectedly unveiled a peace plan that could end the war. I'm Maria Drutska, and let's see what recent days brought us. Hungary has accused Ukraine of threatening its energy security due to Ukraine's partial ban on the transit of oil from the Russian company Lukoil. Hungarians face high prices as Ukraine tries to cut off Russian funding, which is used to finance the killing of Ukrainians, political reports. Last month, Kiev imposed sanctions blocking the transit of pipeline oil sold by Moscow's largest private company, Lukoil, to Central Europe, partially reversing the EU's sanction exemption that allows Russia-dependent countries additional time to hold supplies. Ukraine's goal to undermine a key source of revenue for the Kremlin's military budget 2 years after its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. However, this move has raised concerns about supply shortage in Budapest, which relies 70% on oil imports from Russia, with Lukoil supplying half of that volume. Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó said that Ukraine's actions could threaten Hungary's long-term energy security, criticizing Kiev for this step. Szijjártó considers Ukraine's decision to hold Lukoil oil transit as incomprehensible and unacceptable. According to him, Hungary has already urged Ukraine to address this issue, and it's expected to be discussed at the EU Foreign Ministers Summit. It is strange that a country aspiring to join the EU jeopardizes the energy supply of 2 EU member states, especially in summer when energy consumption is at its peak, Szijjártó said. How interesting. Has Szijjártó mentioned that funding Russia and consequently the use of these funds to continue the extermination of the Ukrainian people threatens Ukraine's long-term security, for instance, or even its very existence? Did Szijjártó perhaps want to criticize Putin and the Kremlin for something as well? No? Didn't want to? How curious. Isn't it surprising to see, Ertos, that some Russia, which aims to destroy all aspirations of the people to exist, including those aspiring to join the EU, is shelling the same energy infrastructure and facilities in winter, summer, autumn, and spring when energy consumption is at its peak? Isn't that at all surprising to Szijjártó? According to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, in April this year alone, Hungary spent almost €250 million on Russian oil and gas. That's a huge amount of money going to fund the Russian war and to kill Ukrainians. After Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the EU imposed an embargo on the import of Russian oil arriving by sea to the bloc. However, it exempted pipeline supplies, including those through the Drutska pipeline to Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic, to give these countries time to find alternative supplies, provided they do so quickly as possible. So, what has been done in over 2 years? What steps has Hungary taken to find alternative sources of supply? Not only Hungary is caught in the sanctions net. Slovakia's largest oil refinery, Slovnaft, buys oil from Lukoil, but a spokesperson for the country's Ministry of Economy told Politico that the company has found alternative suppliers, and currently the supply of Russian oil to Slovakia has not been halted. The sanctions requiring the Ukrainian pipeline operator Ukrtransnafta to reject applications for the transit of Lukoil's contracted oil through Druzhba do not yet apply to other Russian oil companies that continue to transport oil through Ukraine, including Rosneft and Tatneft. This is partially because the pipeline continues to transport non-Russian oil from Kazakhstan to Germany, said Olena Lepenko, a Ukrainian energy security expert at the C Group Center. However, following Lukoil's sanctions against other companies extracting and exporting Russian oil are approaching, she predicted. As noted by the publication Kasatka Media, Budapest can now negotiate an increase in imports from Rosneft or increase supplies from Croatia via the Adria pipeline. Hungary could also release some of its emergency strategic reserves, which would provide oil for about 90 days. There are plenty of options. Perhaps Hungary needs to stop blaming Ukraine for everything and start taking steps that align with other EU countries, of which it is a member for now. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you who send coffees on Buy Me a Coffee and become patrons for this channel. Subscribe to my Twitter page where I post regular updates about the situation in Ukraine, and to my Instagram where I show just a daily life in Ukraine. Okay guys, you probably noticed that I am too excited when I speak about Hungary. Now about not so exciting news. The Russian army continue its offensive actions on several fronts. It is possible that Russia is accumulating reserves in the Zaporizhia direction for an attack on Ugledar, said Mariupol mayor's advisor Petro Andrushenko. Troops are being redeployed, changing their route at the same time from two directions. According to him, entire units are being moved and occupiers are advancing in columns. We haven't seen this for a long time, he said. This usually indicates that a new prepared unit is being deployed somewhere near the line of confrontation. We observed a similar trend before the preparations for the Avdiivka and Mariinka offensive. At that time, they concentrated directly in the Mariupol area. The same trend is now observed in Zaporizhia region, noted the Mariupol mayor's advisor. Everything indicates that the Russians are again returning to their idea of starting to unpack another section of the front, namely in the Rozivka-Polohe area, and then moving towards Ugledar. So it all ultimately revolves around Ugledar. It's not an offensive on Zaporizhia, but about creating conditions for the Ukrainian defense forces holding Ugledar to be forced to retreat. Why Ugledar is important to the Russians? According to Andrushenko, the enemy's plans involve launching a newly built railway from Russia to occupied Crimea. They need Ugledar not to reach the Donetsk region border, but to control the Ugledar railway junction, because this is the gateway that fully opens up the railway from Rostov to occupied Crimea, at least to occupied Melitopol. This branch includes Rozivka, Berdyansk, Tokmak, and Melitopol itself. It's a dream for the occupiers, a logical connection. So they dream about the Zaporizhia direction. Andrushenko commented on that. However, he believes that the Russians currently lack sufficient forces to go on the offensive at Ugledar. In the most optimistic scenario for the Russians, they still need at least 1.5 to 2 weeks to accumulate reserves before starting offensive actions. Russian-Ukrainian war veteran and reserve Major Alexei Hedman stated that Russian occupation forces are planning an offensive in Sumy region. According to him, there are signs of preparation as reported by patriots of Ukraine media. They obviously want to, and most likely they will do something there. We saw the same on the Kharkiv front. There are signs of preparation for offensive actions, and in 9 out of 10 cases they come to fruition. 1 out of 10 is when something is done but is just a diversionary maneuver, Hedman noted. In his opinion, the preparation for an attack is indicated by increased activity of sabotage and reconnaissance group, shelling and communication means. At the same time, given the shortage of manpower, the invaders cannot afford the luxury of keeping tens of thousands of soldiers idle near the northern Ukrainian border. Whether an offensive will happen or not, and whether they will simply divert our defense or stretch our troops, 9 out of 10 something will happen, he summarized. Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson unveiled a peace plan that could end the war on the right terms for Ukraine and the West, he wrote in the Daily Mail. Johnson believes that Trump understands that if Putin is not stopped, he will move on to Poland and the Baltic states, and as a result, the US will face a choice of either giving up its role as a global leader or spending trillions of dollars to restore global order and send young Americans abroad to die on foreign soil. I believe Trump could end this on the right terms for Ukraine and the West, writes Johnson. According to him, the first step is to strengthen the hand of the West and support Ukraine. He believes that US presidential candidate Donald Trump could simply do what comes naturally to him, cut through bureaucratic red tape and delays, give Ukrainians the necessary permissions, and then, when Putin is pushed back, offer a deal. Johnson emphasized that Putin would have to retreat at least to the border that existed before the 2022 invasion and to avoid future conflicts and uncertainties. The rest of Ukraine should be recognized as a free country able to choose its own fate in the EU and NATO, and highly desirable for rapid accession. The British politicians stressed that Ukrainians have over 1 million armed people, are already well acquainted with NATO equipment, and are the most effective anti-Russian forces in the world. When the war ends, there is no reason why Ukrainian troops shouldn't replace part of the 70,000 American soldiers still in Europe. According to Johnson, this would allow Trump to save money, bring American troops home, and make Europeans do more for their own defense, which is one of his key goals. He also expressed the view that Russian leader Putin would be able to claim that the special military operation, the invasion, was successful and that he has denazified Ukraine. Special protective measures might be foreseen for Russian speakers. First of all, with Trump in the White House, there is a real prospect of some global reapproachment with Russia and with Putin, a turn to the times when Russia was a respected G8 partner and even NATO partner, he said. But there is only one way to achieve such a result: through force. Washington under Trump would need to show that international borders must be respected and that the Soviet Empire cannot be restored by force. I'm not sure how effective this plan is, to be honest. Why would Putin agree to retreat to the February 2022 borders, considering he has incorporated these 5 new regions into Russia's constitution? And if Putin does not face a military defeat, why would he give up territory? And if he does face a military defeat, then why the borders of February 2022 and not those of 1991? Furthermore, how would he present Russia's defeat, and that he needs to give up these 5 regions according to their constitution as a victory to his people who have been brainwashed by the Kremlin for decades? Also, why should the presence of Ukrainian troops scare Putin? I mean, in Europe. After all, the presence of American troops as NATO based in Europe provides some deterrence against enemies. America is a nuclear power, and Russia still fears America's might, no matter what they say. Thus, the presence of American troops in Europe makes sense, not just to be there for sake of it, because otherwise there would be troops from other NATO European countries, right? The prospect of some global rapprochement with Russia and with Putin return to the days when Russia was a respected G8 partner. So you would invite Putin to sit at your table as if nothing happened. After Russia deliberately destroyed and was destroying and keep destroying Ukrainian people, kill Ukrainian children, bomb children's hospital, tortured prisoners of war, and did many other things that not only don't align with human and democratic values, but are also hard to comprehend. So you will just shake hands with war criminals and say, well, what's done is done, let's move on. Something doesn't quite add up here, and honestly, I don't understand Boris Johnson's logic and his plan. Share your thoughts, guys, on Johnson's plan in the comments. What do you think are there possible ways to end the war that Putin might agree to, but that would be acceptable to Ukraine? I'm really interested in your opinion. And that's it for today. I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content. Please like this video, and if you really liked it, you can support the channel's development on Patreon or buy me a coffee. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!